The big question, are we headed towards World War III? Many of us are very worried about that. They had this kind of bullshit summit about peace. Nothing came from it. And then we get the news that the House has passed some legislation that would automate the draft. So here is the story from Military Times. Lawmakers move to automate selective service registration for all men. So I guess I should say it's not automating the draft, but it is automating selective service registration. Now, men in this country are already required at the age of 18 to go and register for selective service. So many people are wondering, well, then what's the big deal? This just automates the process. And that was actually the thinking for the lawmakers, well, I shouldn't say it's the thinking. I think what they're thinking is we're gearing up for war. But their reasoning that they presented to the public was, well, it just takes so much time and effort to send out mailers and make commercials to get men to understand that they need to register at 18, all the education programs to tell them that they need to do this. And so we just did away with all of that, took away that budget that we were spending on that, and which, by the way, they've increased, of course, the budget. The budget has been massively increased. So, but they say, well, maybe this will help relieve the budget a bit, and instead we're going to we just automate it, so any man that turns 18 up until 26 years old in the country is automatically going to be registered for selective service. The problem with it, of course, is that it takes away a person's right and ability to, their ability to protest. There's about 100,000 men in this country annually who don't register. It's an active protest. They choose not to. And that is their prerogative. When it's automated, that takes away that protest. And so that is a huge problem. Just the ability for somebody to be able to do that. I'm sorry, we're having tech problems and I'm getting messages, so I'm getting a bit distracted, guys. So let's just, are we okay? Are we okay? Okay. Hopefully everything's okay but we might be having some tech problems is what I'm saying. All right. So let me just get back on track. I got a little distracted there. Okay. Okay, so let me figure out where we are. Sorry. Distractions aren't the best, guys, so don't do that, please. Just handle it yourself. Okay. Okay, so then Ukraine has released meanwhile, another point showing that we might be going to war is, first of all, they've now upped this. And there's also discussion in the Senate that women would be, and they've been trying to pass this for 3 or 4 years now, trying to get women to be signed up into the selective service draft. They're saying that, well, we got to make this fair and equitable, so we've got to include women. That just doubles the force, the military force, potentially, in case there is a draft. Meanwhile, Ukraine has released prisoners now to fight. So they're getting very desperate, obviously, for fighters as we're ramping up with selective service. This is all just very odd timing. Here is the story from the Washington Post that Ukraine has released, they're short on troops and they're now freeing criminals to fight. Says not all convicts qualify, and those who do are required to join assault brigades, which engage in some of the most deadly fighting. So they're basically sticking these prisoners on the front lines, telling them, you've been convicted of a crime, now you're going to have to go and fight in these high-risk assault brigades. More than 2,700 men have been released from Ukrainian prisons since the parliament adopted a law in May authorizing certain convicts to enlist, including those jailed for dealing drugs, stealing phones, and committing armed assaults and murders, among other serious crimes. Could you imagine stealing a phone and then they just throw you on the front lines of war as your punishment? It's just getting very desperate in Ukraine, which is just really unfortunate. And that just goes to show more need for an actual peace agreement, more need and urgency to actually take Putin seriously when he puts forth his peace agreement. Of course, that could be, they don't just have to accept what he put out there. They could actually negotiate that deal, but they're not even negotiating with him. They're just totally turning from him completely and utterly. All right, let's get to some of the reactions to this. This is the Colombian president who said they didn't even show up to the peace summit because it's really not about peace. Instead, it's about war. Watch this.
Nos estamos acercando a una conflagración mundial. Mientras se agota el tiempo de resolver la crisis climática que puede acabar con todo, aquí las naciones, el poder se dedica a la guerra. Lo que hemos encontrado en relación a la conferencia de paz, entre comillas, en Suiza, es que es básicamente un alinderamiento al lado de la guerra. Y nosotros no estamos de acuerdo con eso. Por eso he decidido suspender mi visita y la invitación a la conferencia en Suiza, porque América Latina no quiere más guerra. Lo que quiere es la construcción de la paz lo más pronto posible, tanto la suspensión del genocidio sobre el pueblo palestino, como encontrar los senderos difíciles de resolver la guerra entre Ucrania y Rusia. Nosotros estamos dispuestos a participar en conferencias que libremente se dediquen a buscar los senderos de la paz y no a construir bloques para la guerra. No estamos con la guerra, estamos con la paz.
Okay, so there he was saying that what he says, what we found in relation to this peace conference is it's basically an alignment for war, and we don't want to have any part in that. We don't agree with that. That's why we've decided to suspend our participation in this. It's just a summit for war, and he's not wrong on that. They didn't come up with any peace agreements. Here's Dennis Kucinich. This is what he had to say about the draft that is being implemented, how we are potentially on the brink of World War III. He says, the House of Representatives just passed the Defense Authorization Bill, FY25 NDAA, which provides for a national automatic registration by selective service of all young Americans between the ages of 18 and 26. This sets the stage for a large-scale conscription draft to enable expansion of wars, and it is counter to individual liberties, constitutional rights, and freedom. Yeah. So there he is saying he's very worried about that this looks like this is just, we're going to go to all scale, full scale war. And he says, first the draft, then war. Automatic registration makes it easier for the government to gather information from a multitude of databases to inquire about the personal status of every young person between the ages of 18 and 26. It's one thing for an individual to register with selective service as it is currently required. It's an altogether different practice for the government to automatically register every young American, and raises chilling questions about coordination of government and big tech to track young Americans. So there's multiple issues there. So not only would they have to track you using tech to automatically register you, so they're clearly watching. We all know they're watching. But this also, a draft is highly controversial. Whether or not a government, do you trust, think about this. Do you trust the United States government to use your body in a moral, ethical, and responsible way when they throw you on the battlefield to go to war? Do you trust your government will put you in a war that's meaningful and ethical and moral? Do you believe that you should fight for this government? Do you think this government is so great that you trust that whatever battle they send you to, it must be for a good reason, a true reason, a reason to defend this country against evil and atrocities and invasion and whatever? I certainly don't trust this government at all. I can't even trust them to manage basic day-to-day governance in this country, let alone giving them our bodies to throw on a front line for them to make a decision. How many wars have we fought in our lifetimes, those of us who are alive right now? How many wars has the United States engaged in that have actually been worth anything? Do you want to go fight for that? It's, to me, immoral. It's totally immoral for a country to institute a draft at all. I find it totally and completely immoral. So I'm against draft. I'm against the draft entirely. If you can't rally up enough support voluntarily from people to defend their country, then whatever the war is, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. 9/11, America was attacked. Now, there's a lot of dispute about what happened, who did it, and all that. Let's just put that aside for a second. The country was attacked. And how many Americans rushed to the recruitment offices to sign up that day? And the days after, the weeks after that? Loads of Americans, because America saw, oh no, we're under attack. I'm willing to go to war for this. Now, they didn't, of course, know what wars our country would actually march us into. They wouldn't, many of them said, wait a minute, I signed up to defend us after 9/11, but then you sent me to Iraq because of weapons of mass destruction, when it wasn't. Who were the Iraqis that were on these planes that attacked us? Where's Osama bin Laden? Is he in Iraq? Are they hiding him? None of it made sense, of course, afterwards, but none of these young people who rushed to sign up knew that. They didn't know that our government was just going to throw them into a different battle when they signed up to defend the country after 9/11. That's the government for you. That's our government for you. And that's why a lot of people don't want to fight in the wars. So if they can't get enough people to volunteer themselves for battle, then it's not worth the battle, whatever it is. They've got to be able to get us to a point where we say, it is worth defending this country. It is worth fighting. This war in particular is worth fighting. But they're not going to get that. Cardi B knows that. And she actually came out with a video response to this selective service automated draft that the House wants to do and the potential women being added to it. It's got a lot of foul language, but we want to play it. She makes two really good points. Watch this.
I just read an article saying that the House just passed a bill that they're going to automatically register men from 18 to 26 for war, okay? And all I want to say is to America, good luck with that. These new little are TikTokers, baby. These motherfuckers gonna fight no war. We're gonna die. You're gonna die. You might as well just keep investing money in your guns, because these new kids, you want to send these new kids to fight these wars? The TikTok hip shakers, out of your mind. This is a new America, baby. This ain't the 19 months. Nah, like seriously, you're gonna draft these kids that be TikToking all day to fight them, what? Most likely what? Them Russians? Them motherfuckers that be fighting bears and motherfucking climbing mountains to go to school and whatever? I got some news for you, mother.
Yeah, so her point is, you got all these TikTokers, these kids watching TikTok. You think you're going to draft them into a war, like these kids that are just like hip shaking all the time on TikTok, where they're going to go up against these Russians who've been fighting bears. I don't think the average Russian goes around fighting bears, but nonetheless, it's this idea that our culture, our kids, they're weak, right? So she's pointing out they're weak. Secondly, she's saying from the beginning, it looked like with the TikTok and these people on social media is that they also see whether or not they want to engage in these wars. They see what the U.S. is about. They're not for it. They've expressed themselves being so completely against U.S. foreign policy time and time again. How are you going to get all these kids that are so woke in good and bad ways, right? They're woke in that they've woken up to the U.S. foreign policy and they say, I don't want anything to do with that. You guys just wage wars for no stupid reason. And they're woke in that they're weak, right? And that's what she's kind of pointing out. So I thought that was an interesting reaction to share with you guys. But this is ultimately really ridiculous. Here we are reeling ourselves into World War III with Russia, no path to peace. They're doubling down. Ukraine is now siphoning off people from prisons in order to fight on the front lines. We've also got, actually, let's show this one thing I skipped past. It was this plan, the U.S., that the Telegraph came out with they discovered these plans that the U.S. has drafted in order to get NATO troops to the front lines. This, if we can look at it, here's the image. There it is. Throw that up there. There it is. So this is getting troops. They've got this plan that they've drawn up, like how exactly we would get all these different troops to the front lines. And notice how they're all American troops for most of the part. I mean, how many other troops are NATO going to actually supply in a battle against Russia? So they're already planning for it. I mean, I don't expect them not to plan for it. I would assume that they are going to be planning for it, but it's just really interesting. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson show, which you could catch just by heading to that link down below, KimIversonShow.com. You can watch the full show from what you just watched, or you could catch the full show live Monday through Friday, live streams, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. See you then. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Never miss an episode. Never miss a clip. Never miss a segment. Thanks, guys.